Good morning, Patreon. This question was asked by Snake Doc Actual. I'm here with my lovely talented who is piloting the vehicle, and I am the navigator. Snake Doc, thank you for being here, brother. You've been with us a long time, and I really appreciate it. The question is simply, how am I going to feed a large family? I'm assuming that you mean after the balloon goes up. You know, and it really, short answer, it depends. What does it depend on? How many people, how old they are, where you live, what your soil's like, how actively you're gardening right now, how well you're bartering and trading right now, so forth and so on. So we can address those things one by one. How am I going to feed a large family? I did a post recently on Patreon. You can scroll back and look for it. The food calculator, where I laid out explicitly how many calories you need per person per year, and even how much to store of each type of grain. So let's say you got 10 people. Just go to the the row for 10 people, and that's what you need. So the question then becomes, if you've got all your food stored, if you have a year's worth of food for 10 people, how are you going to feed that large family after that food goes away? What are your thoughts?
What comes to mind is what comes to mind is we've talked to Grandma about this before, and my grandma, so it was my great-granny, my great-granddaddy, plus 8 kids. So that's 10 people total.
Yeah.
And they didn't have a lot of money. And more often than not, meat was used as a flavoring.
Right.
It wasn't a main course. And today we're of the mindset that, you have to have a pound of meat or whatever to go along with the meal. And I think in an SHTF situation, when the balloon goes up, meat's gonna be a scarcity.
Yep.
You're not gonna have that. So I think the first step is to kind of get that mentality out of your head.
That's a good point.
And they would use the leftover,
like a ham bone in the beans,
right? But she tells us stories of all they could afford were black eyed peas. So for a month, that's all they ate.
I think it was one winter.
Yeah,
just black eyed peas.
Black eyed peas and some cornbread.
Yep.
So, and they got by. She didn't want to eat black eyed peas after that for a while, but that's what they lived off of. So I think that's how we kind of have to approach things. Is it's gonna be very simple meals.
Yeah.
You're not gonna be cooking up this elaborate
no feasts.
Right. And I think that's
other than biblical feasts. But
right.
Go ahead.
But I think the meat aspect is a big thing, and that's why it's so important for us to have that meat kind of rotation in place, because you might be able to find somebody that you can barter with for meat, but I can guarantee you it's gonna be like a high commodity.
Yeah.
Like people,
It'll be in demand for sure.
right? People are gonna get excited when they have a pound of chicken or a pound of beef that they can do something with, because that's how it was in the old days.
Yep.
So that's my thoughts.
Good point. I think you also really need to look at right now production capability. I am working on, I'm not ready to speak on yet, but I'm working on trying to find the sweet spots as far as caloric density per type of food and the most minimal input required to achieve the most caloric output, to find those sweet spots and identify them for us as a whole. Christian at the Ice Age Farmer has done a good bit of work on that, and there's people in the forums section of iceagefarmer.com who have done some work on that as well that I've been referring to, and I think I'm going to go a little bit farther and deeper than they have to, they've identified to a greater or lesser degree what foods have the most caloric density. That's great, and I've used that as a stepping stone. And now what I'm looking at is basically a cost-benefit analysis of planting these types of foods, and then also passive food. I'm seriously considering clearing a portion of our hardwood forest and planting walnuts, because the walnuts are extremely caloric dense. They have lots of calories in them, but they are also an excellent timber commodity and a habitat for wildlife that forages on it, like deer, that I'd be happy to smack in the head with a .30 caliber bullet, or the heart, or the lungs, or whatever, and put it in my belly. So things like that I've been looking at as far as production. How do I produce 1 million to 1.3 million calories per person per year? And the short answer is it's going to be a lot of work. And knowing that it's going to be a lot of work, we're trying to be intentional about it now. Frankly, we're not as good as we can be right now. We need to get better at it. But plant big gardens. Put grain down, like grow grain. I'm experimenting with growing, I think one of y'all told me, growing scratch grain for my chickens. It's got sorghum and corn and I don't know what else is in it. But I'm just planting straight scratch grain into the ground and letting it come up as fodder. I have Charlie Bear, Buzzard Roost, sent me a whole bunch of different types of grain, and there's wheat in there. We're going to plant that wheat at some point and see what we can do with it. It'll probably be winter wheat since the spring has come and gone. So we're experimenting with all of this now to try and find the sweet spots so that we know going forward what's going to be a waste of our time and what isn't, so that we don't burn valuable time in an emergency scenario to try and figure out how to get food, make food, forage food. And I've said repeatedly, I don't think hunting and fishing is going to be a viable option. A, because the amount of time that it takes. B, if you look at hunter-gatherers, they were nomadic. The vast majority of Americans are not nomadic right now, and they had to move around to take pressure off the natural resources so that they didn't starve to death. And there were a lot less of them than there are people now too. So I think that things that you can forage, hunt, fish, and trap are short-term commodities. They're not long-term commodities, and that's been proven out during the Great Depression. I was just talking with the Matt Oakey recently about why are deer so small in Oklahoma. All the big ones got killed during the Great Depression, and the little fast ones are the ones that are left, and they are the ones that were breeding, and so now you have small fast deer in Oklahoma because of the Great Depression. How are you going to feed a large family? First, man, stack your food to the rafters. Next, really focus on the production, the ability to produce food. It can be done, but you have to be really intentional about it and really intensive about it. It's going to take time. There's no miracle drug. There's no quick fix. There's none of that. It's just you have to plant the food. You have to tend the plants. You have to pull the plants, process the food, can the food. It's labor intensive. It's labor intensive, and I don't know quite the answer yet. But man, I'm working on it. I'm working on this food production aspect pretty diligently, trying to find out what's the best way for us to approach it as a tribe here. So thank you, Snake Doc. Shalom, brother.